What's up guys, Cat Blam here. So today we got a Warden tier list for the PvP sets, or sets you will use in PvP. Just to drink straight into it. Starting off, we got Spectral Cloak, which is the Black Rose Prison dual wield. This one I want to put into the A tier, 6% more damage, 6% more mitigation, and then of course if you're running Quick Cloak, you get Major Expedition and you get Major Evasion. Which that's a lot of buff stacking, a lot of stats. Major Evasion, that's 20% less damage from pretty much all ultimates, just about, except for like Overload and Incap. So tons of mitigation there. Then an extra 6% from the actual Black Rose dual wield, plus 6% more damage, which will kind of make up for you dropping Birds of Prey, which gives Minor Berserk. So it kind of makes up for that. Makes you a little tankier. The reason that it's not S tier is because, of course, it takes up a slot. You're going to have to drop either a Mythic or your monster set. So next we got Wretched Vitality. Usually I don't have mega sustain issues on Warden. It sustains decently well, so you shouldn't need Wretched. But if you're playing outnumbered, you know, it's whatever. Use it if you need it. Although the tankier you are, the less heal spam you're gonna need at the same time. But Wretched, I think it's probably just A tier for every class, to be honest, besides DK, which feels it's sustained through Ultimate Gen. But yeah, Wretched's just a sustained staple, good for 1vx. Kyonar, I think for dueling, Kyonar is probably S tier if you're doing like a D-swing dueling build. However, its only application is dueling, so maybe I'm gonna put it in A tier. All of the Infernal. People sleep on this. They don't know. If you know, you know. Maw of the Infernal is basically a 2-piece Way of Fire. It is actually amazing. So Maw of the Infernal, I don't know if I like it in S tier. I really want to put it in S tier, but I think it's A tier because Barney can just run off and chase people that you don't want it to chase. So because of the targeting issues of Maw of the Infernal, I'll probably put in A tier. But in dueling, amazing, amazing set. I like it a lot. Zons, I think I'll also put in A tier. A lot more targeted. It's really good for like GVG, Group v Group, 2v2, 3v3, stuff like that. Zons is very strong. But I wouldn't really recommend it for like 1vx, and I feel like there's probably better sets for dueling on Warden in terms of monster sets. At least sets that are a lot easier to proc at the same time. So Zon is maybe high A, low S, something around there. Marsalok, I think I only really like Marsalok on dual wield Warden, and really don't really play dual wield Warden unless you're playing the Acuity build. So Marsalok's probably going to go in B tier. Actually, to get this out of the way, Way of Fire, B tier as well. I have one build with these two that is pretty darn decent. I haven't posted the build, but I've used it quite a bit. And I've gotten a lot of kills on good players with it. So I actually quite like this setup. Marsalok with Way of Fire, Wretched, because it actually has a hard time sustaining on that particular build. So I like it for that, but that's like the only build that I found these two to actually work on. So outside of that one very particular build, I don't think it's very good. Thrashian? Probably S. I don't really like the downsides of the minus health part, but of course you can remedy that these days with Healing Soul, so really good for that. It's also really good for group play because your teammates will make up for your lack of health. Also, you have a lot easier time staying alive with group mates, so you won't lose your stacks if you die. So not dying is key with Thrashians. But yeah, it's just really annoying to also farm the stacks on the siege. But I cannot deny that it's very strong. Concentrated Force. This is the Asylum Staff. Bumping that straight into the S tier. I've used it in 2v2s, I've used it in 3v3s, I've used it in 1v1s, I've used it in 1vx. For Magden, probably the single best item you can have on Magden. Absolutely amazing, which leads us into Reliquin, which is absolutely amazing with the Asylum Staff coupled in with it. It's just so much just pressure. Just a million little damage instances. If you know, you know. But for Reliquin, I don't think it's very good for Xing. I think it's kind of in like the same ballpark as Zon's, where you'll use it in duels, you'll use it in your 2v2s maybe. But you won't really use it outside of that. Although you can Zerg with it. You know, they got people that Zerg with it on their heavy attack builds and it does a decent chunk of damage. Not bad for that. You know who I'm talking about. So Destructive Impact. This is the Master Staff. I think I put that in A tier. I still think it's very strong, but it lacks a lot of upfront burst damage unless you use it with Crushing Shock. Usually I use it as a spammable over Crushing Shock, so I can fit other abilities. But I think this kind of got bumped down a tier this patch just because of how the whole Ice Staff changes went. You can't really use it with the Frostbite set anymore to bump up its damage even more. You can't use it with Ice Furnace. I only have like one build that I like it on, which is actually, funny enough, it's another Reliquin build. I really like Master Staff on Reliquin build because it buffs the hell out of your Reliquin dot. So both of them are actually really good with the Reliquin build, but I feel like the Ice Staff changes really hurt the overall usage of this arena weapon. Also, just to talk about Magden for a sec, I do not like the change to Piercing Cold, because now you can't use the Ice Staff for damage and get the block mitigation and block cost reduction at the same time. That's what really made my Magden survivability good, is the fact that you could front bar Frost Staff and block with it. So you could block cast and be very tanky that way and have good sustain while doing it, because it's like blocking with the shield to get reduced cost. But anyways, get off that tangent. I just think Magden got, like traditional Magden, got hurt very badly by those changes, which was probably unforeseen by Zos. Stinging Slashes, this is Master Dual Wield. Maybe B tier on Warden, because it's like the only way you can really play Dual Wield Warden outside of like Vampire Scratch, so I think it has merit alone on that. Satan the Seducer, another S tier. Satan the Seducer, just very good for so many Warden builds. Like the crit builds, whether you're using Acuity, Order's Wrath, Medusa, stuff like that. Satan the Seducer just buffs your damage. Major Berserk, amazing. Major Force, more crit damage. Major Courage, more damage. Everything Satan the Seducer does is just very good on Warden. Death Dealers, if you're not using Satan the Seducers, you're probably using Death Dealers on Warden. Warden is married to Death Dealers, especially if you play a health stacking build like I usually do. So Death Dealers, absolutely amazing. Warden is married to it, because you can get away with stacking 64 points into health, getting more points of health off of Death Dealers, and then getting enough resources in your Stam and Mag to make up for it. Griffin's Ferocity. I put this in A tier. It buffs your crit damage, it gives you move speed, and what I like about Griffins is that it's like one of the only sets that allows you to actually run Sea Serpent's Coil in open world, which is amazing. So you can use it with Sea Serpents, get tons of damage stacking out of that. So Sea Serpents on Warden I'd say is A tier. Oak Fathers, I don't really know how to rate this. I've never ran Oak Fathers on Warden, so you're gonna have to tell me in the comments how Oak Fathers is. I've talked to Juggy about it, I think he's ran it a little bit, but I don't think he was the biggest fan of it over other sets. So I might put Oak Fathers in B tier. but let me know if it needs to be A or even S tier on Warden. I just don't think Warden's very good with Oak Fathers compared to like other sets. It's funny enough getting into like something that's kind of similar is like Shattered Fate, but I think Shattered Fate is actually really, what's the word, versatile, because I've ran Shattered Fate with the Sharp Maul and had just true damage at all times. You can run it with the Nirnhone Greatsword and have tons of weapon damage and penetration. You can run it with the Precise Battle Axe even and have a bunch of crit and extra crit damage. And because of that versatility, I think Shattered Fate deserves A tier. Maybe even S tier. That was like my old main build. I ran Clever Alchemist with Shattered Fate and I absolutely dumpstered everyone with the burst that it has. Armor of Truth. This is Juggy's old bread and butter. I tried it, I didn't really like it, I wasn't feeling it. Just didn't have enough damage. It had a bunch of weapon damage for no reason, is what it felt like. Because he didn't have crit chance, he didn't have crit damage, didn't have penetration. It was just, it felt like weapon damage for the sake of weapon damage. Which I don't think is very good except on DK. Phoenix Moth, probably B tier. You won't see this set outside of group play. Because it gives you minor courage and it gives you minor force and it also gives that to group mates, which is really cool, really awesome. But if you're running it solo, you won't really have enough crit chance to make that minor force worth it. Unless you run Phoenix Moth with like Medusa, no not Medusa because you're already getting minor force. Run Phoenix Moth with like Order's Wrath. But then you run into an issue where you don't have that much crit chance still. Even with Order's Wrath, you have like 35% crit chance. That's why I like running Rallying Cry on the back bar, because it gives you more crit chance to make that more worth it. Headset died for a sec. Okay, moving on to Medusa. I think this is an A tier. It gives you tons of crit chance. It gives you more crit chance than Order's Wrath even. And it gives you more crit damage, especially because you can't really fit minor force on Warden. Unless you're running like a scribe ability. So I think for that reason Medusa deserves an A tier. A lot of people overlook Medusa. Juggy kind of put me onto it. I haven't tried it yet. I've seen him use it. He has a lot of success with it. I ran the numbers. I totally get why he loves it because it actually looks really good. Order's Wrath. Even though solo, I think Medusa's better. I think Order's Wrath fits in for stuff like, it's still good solo, but it's also really good in group because someone in your group can run the set Phoenix Moth actually, and you'll get that minor force, and you'll get the extra 8% crit damage from Order's Wrath, and you'll have 18% more crit damage instead of just 10. That's why I think Order's Wrath is really good. In Marcher's Cruelty, I've used it for Xing, I've used it in group, I've used it in duels. I don't think it's an S tier like it is for DK. It's still a bit random, but that Major Vulnerability proc is really nice. The Major Cowardice is really nice. Major Defile is really nice. Major Maim is really nice. Just all the debuffs on Kin Marchers is just good. Essence Thief. I've used this for Xing and 1v1s. I think it's pretty solid. A little annoying for Xing, like I covered in the DK video, because you gotta chase that green ball around. Dueling, I think it's one of the best damage stacking sets, because I don't know if I went over my dueling build for D-Swing, but it's Essence Thief, Rallying Cry, Sea Serpent's Coil with Kionars. It's just so much damage. If you bring that out to open world, you'll probably die to the Zergs, but if you catch people in those unexpected 1v1s, you're just gonna dumpster them with this with the amount of damage it does. Yeah, Essence Thief, A tier. Mechanical Acuity. All hail Mechanical Acuity. I hate Mechanical Acuity. Literally everyone uses it, they're carried by it. Baby's first 1vx set. Baby got his first 1vx on this set. You know how it is, it's carried as hell. But, cannot deny that it is very, very strong. But yeah, next time someone kills you with Mechanical Acuity Warden, with the charm, and stuff like that, just know that 90% of that is just carry and it's 10% player input. Rallying Cry, I think, is another S tier. Very, very good on Warden. Really, I think it's S tier in like every class, except maybe DK because you rather use other sets on DK. Yeah, very, very strong. It gives you more crit chance, it gives you more weapon damage, and it gives you a shit ton of crit resist. It's a very powerful set. You got damage and mitigation in one set. Clever Alchemist. I used to want to put this in S tier, but these days with how strong the crit acuity meta is, there's just not that much reason to run Clever anymore because it's just not necessary. You're not really killing people with a nuker DB anymore. You're usually playing around the damage of Northern Storm and crits. For the most part, unless you want to be weird like me and still run it. Because you like the old school stammed in Dawnbreaker stuff. Still, it gives you a lot of weapon damage and it gives you a couple lines of health, which is really strong for health stacking on Warden. Like I said, you can run Clever Alchemist with Death Dealer's Feet, 64 points into health with Bear Haunch, you'll get like 50k health. It's it's stupid. Incredibly broken in group play. But solo, I don't think it's as good anymore, but I think it still has a place if you're playing like duo or trio. Or hell, even more than that. And last, Balorg, the best monster set on Warden by far. It just gives you weapon damage and a ton of penetration, makes up for not running pen on any builds really. So you don't have to run much pen. You got major and minor breach, you got sharp on your weapon, you got like 15k pen at all times in Warden. Then you use Balorgs, and then you're pretty much doing true damage. Balorg is just pairs really nicely with the Warden playstyle. Burst or Northern Acuity, really strong. And honorable mention, because I forgot to put it on the list, Mighty Chudan. I think Chudan is the best monster set to use on Warden that's not Balorgs, at least for open world. Mighty Chudan is really nice because it allows you to take off your armor buff and you can slot other abilities there. I like to use it for taking off the armor buff, running 5 medium so I can slot shuffle, so I can get major evasion. Of course, you can also slot your Shimmering Shield and get major heroism, and just spam out shield ults as well. So I think Mighty Chudan's really good. So Mighty Chudan, probably go in the A tier, maybe S tier. And with that said, that is the Warden set tier list.